The prison gates slammed shut with a thunderous echo that seemed to shake her soul. Diane Holloway stood motionless, her eyes locked on the tiny window of the interrogation room. Inside, her son sat alone, his expression blank, unreadable. Just 2 days ago, she was folding his laundry and worrying about his college applications. Now, Caleb was the prime suspect in a string of brutal murders that left an entire city terrified. The media called him the Holloway Horror. Detective Marcus Bell watched Diane from across the hallway. "Do you really think he's capable of this?" he asked. Her voice trembled. "I raised him alone. He never even got detention." In the silence that followed, a single question burned through her mind. How did I not see it coming? The screen flashes images, crime scene photos, flickering candlelight vigils, neighbors whispering, locks being changed. And at the center of it all, Caleb's cold stare, peering from beneath the hoodie he always wore. The voice of the narrator cuts in, low and deliberate. What if the person you love most is hiding a darkness you can't even imagine? Subscribe now and join a community that dares to look into the darkest corners of the human mind. New cases every week, raw, real, unforgettable. Don't just watch, uncover. Hit the bell so you're the first to know when the next chilling truth is revealed. This is only the beginning. Diane Holloway had never planned on being a single mother. At 23, she found herself standing alone in a hospital room, cradling a 7-pound baby boy with wide, glassy eyes. Caleb. He barely cried, just stared, quiet, intense, alert in a way that unsettled the nurses. From the very beginning, Diane poured herself into motherhood. She worked double shifts as a waitress, skipped meals so Caleb wouldn't go without, and never missed a school event, even when she had to rush straight from work in her grease-stained apron. To the outside world, they were a picture of resilience. Diane was the kind of mother who knew every one of Caleb's friends by name, who left little notes in his lunchbox, who whispered, "I'll always protect you," when he had nightmares. And Caleb, he was polite, quiet, smart. Too smart, some would say. Teachers praised his essays and feared his eyes, unblinking, calculating. He didn't like loud noises, or hugs, or people touching his things. But Diane thought that was just who he was, reserved, observant. A deep thinker, she'd tell her sister on the phone. They lived in a modest 2-bedroom rental just outside Fairview, a sleepy town that prided itself on its low crime rate and neighborhood block parties. Every Halloween, Diane hand-stitched Caleb's costumes, even after he said he was too old for them. She never missed Sunday pancakes or movie nights, but little cracks began to show. At 8, Caleb came home with a dead bird in his backpack. "I found it," he said. "I wanted to study it." At 10, he was suspended for drawing violent images during class. Diane was called in. Concerned teachers suggested therapy. She declined. "He's just imaginative." She brushed off the red flags, the whispers from other parents, the growing distance in his gaze. Love, she believed, could fix anything. And in her mind, Caleb was still her sweet, strange little boy, the one who held her hand in the grocery store, who once cried when he thought she was sick, but late at night, when she passed his bedroom and caught him staring blankly at the wall, she sometimes felt a chill run through her spine. Just once, she whispered to herself, "What if something's wrong?" Then quickly she pushed the thought away. Because mothers don't raise monsters, right? Diane's deepest desire was simple, to raise a good man. After growing up in a fractured home herself, she had sworn Caleb would never feel unwanted, unloved, or unseen. Every decision she made, every hour she worked, every sacrifice was for him. She imagined a future where Caleb would go to college, maybe become a doctor, maybe move to a bigger city. "He's gifted," she'd say to anyone who doubted him. "He just needs the right environment." But not everyone saw him that way. By the time Caleb was 13, the teachers had stopped using words like gifted and started using words like concerning. One said he had a detached affect. Another recommended a psychological evaluation. Diane resisted. To her, labeling him was the first step toward failure. And failure wasn't an option, not for her son. At home, Caleb had begun to shift in subtle, disquieting ways. He spent more time locked in his room, less interested in anything she used to do for him. When she knocked, he would open the door just wide enough to say, "I'm fine," before closing it again. One day she found him dismantling a squirrel in the backyard. He wore gloves, had tools laid out carefully on a cloth. When she screamed, he looked up calmly and said, "It was already dead. I just want to see how it works." She tried to rationalize it. He's curious. He wants to be a scientist. But something in the way he looked at the animal made her stomach turn. The incidents multiplied. A neighbor's cat disappeared. Another kid at school accused Caleb of putting glass in his sandwich. Diane was called in again, sat in front of a panel of counselors who seemed more afraid than concerned. She defended him fiercely, accusing the school of targeting her son because he was different. "You're trying to make him into something he's not," she said. "He's just misunderstood." But privately, she was beginning to wonder. Late at night, she'd walk past his door and hear nothing. No breathing, no shifting, no sound at all. Once, she opened it and found him sitting upright in bed, eyes wide open, not blinking. He smiled, just thinking. At 15, Caleb stopped showing emotion altogether. No excitement for birthdays, no sadness at funerals. When Diane's sister died suddenly, he didn't shed a tear. He attended the funeral, shook hands, said all the right things. But his face was blank. Still, Diane clung to hope. She began taking him on weekend trips, tried bonding over movies, music, anything. She once found a notebook he kept filled with strange diagrams and cryptic symbols. When she asked about it, he said it was a story he was writing. She didn't press. And then there were the animals. She found a box hidden in the garage. Bones, fur, small scalps. He said he was building a science project. The final straw came when a girl from Caleb's school went missing. Rachel Monroe. She'd been in his chemistry class. Pretty, friendly, the kind of girl Diane hoped her son would someday bring home. Instead, her face was now on posters taped to lampposts and grocery store windows. Missing. No leads. Diane asked Caleb if he knew her. He said, "Barely." But something in his voice was too flat, too prepared. That night, Diane couldn't sleep. She wandered into his room. He was asleep, or pretending to be. She opened his desk drawer and found a folded piece of paper. It was Rachel's picture. A candid photo, one not from the news, one someone would have had to take in person. She didn't say anything. Not that night. Because what was she supposed to say? "Are you following girls from school? Did you do something to Rachel? Are you dangerous?" She folded the photo back up and put it exactly where she found it. Then she went to her own room, locked the door, and cried quietly into her pillow. By morning, she had convinced herself it meant nothing, but the feeling lingered, a knot in her chest that tightened each day. Caleb stared silently at the TV, each time he answered her with that same flat voice. Each time she saw another news report about the girl who still hadn't been found. And deep down, in a place she didn't dare explore, Diane began to fear something unthinkable. What if Caleb wasn't just troubled? What if he was broken? It was a crisp October morning when the town of Fairview woke to the news that would shatter its sense of security. Rachel Monroe, a 17-year-old high school senior, had vanished without a trace. Her car was found abandoned on a desolate stretch of road, keys still in the ignition, her purse untouched on the passenger seat. Diane Holloway read the news with a sinking feeling. Rachel was in Caleb's chemistry class. She remembered the girl's bright smile, the way she always greeted her at school events. Diane's mind raced back to the photo she had found in Caleb's drawer, the candid shot of Rachel, unaware she was being watched. She confronted Caleb that evening. "Do you know anything about Rachel's disappearance?" she asked, trying to keep her voice steady. Caleb looked up from his book, his expression unreadable. "No," he said simply, before returning to his reading. Diane wanted to believe him, But the unease that had been growing inside her for years now screamed for attention. As days turned into weeks, the search for Rachel intensified. Volunteers combed the woods, helicopters scanned from above, and posters with Rachel's face were plastered across town. The community was on edge, fear and suspicion hanging heavy in the air. Then, a break in the case. A hiker discovered a shallow grave in the woods. The body was badly decomposed, but dental records confirmed it was Rachel. The autopsy revealed she had been strangled, her hands bound with a distinctive type of rope. The town was in shock. A memorial service was held, candlelight vigils illuminated the night, and Rachel's parents pleaded for justice. Detective Marcus Bell, a seasoned investigator with a reputation for solving the toughest cases, was assigned to lead the investigation. He noted the peculiarities of the crime scene, the meticulous way the body was buried, the lack of forensic evidence, the unique rope used. Bell began interviewing students and teachers at the high school. Caleb's name came up multiple times. He was described as quiet, intelligent, but distant. Some mentioned his fascination with crime novels and his morbid drawings. Bell requested to speak with Caleb. Diane was hesitant, but agreed. During the interview, Caleb was calm, articulate, and cooperative. He claimed he barely knew Rachel and had no idea what happened to her. But Bell's instincts told him there was more beneath the surface. A week later, another girl went missing. Emily Sanders, 16, disappeared on her way home from a friend's house. Her phone was found discarded in a dumpster, wiped clean of data. The town's panic escalated. Parents kept their children indoors, and rumors spread like wildfire. Diane's anxiety reached a breaking point. She began searching Caleb's room while he was at school. In a locked drawer, she found a collection of items: a necklace identical to one Rachel used to wear, a journal filled with detailed observations about various girls at school, and a roll of the same distinctive rope found at the crime scene. Her hands trembled as she pieced together the implications. The evidence was damning. That evening, she confronted Caleb. Holding up the necklace, she demanded answers. Caleb's demeanor shifted. He looked at her with a coldness she had never seen before. "You shouldn't have gone through my things," he said flatly. Diane's voice broke. "What have you done, Caleb?" He stood up, towering over her. "They were weak," he said. "They didn't deserve to live." Diane backed away, horror washing over her. The boy she had raised, the child she had loved and protected, was confessing to murder without a hint of remorse. She called Detective Bell immediately. Caleb was arrested that night. The evidence found in his room, combined with his confession, led to charges of multiple counts of murder. The town was stunned. The polite, intelligent boy they thought they knew was a cold-blooded killer. Diane was consumed by guilt and grief. She replayed every moment, every sign she had ignored, every excuse she had made. At the trial, Caleb showed no emotion. He detailed his crimes with chilling detachment, describing how he selected his victims, how he planned each murder, and how he disposed of the bodies. The courtroom was silent as he spoke, the horror of his actions sinking in. Diane testified, tears streaming down her face. She spoke of her love for her son, her denial, and her ultimate realization of the truth. Caleb was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. In the aftermath, Diane withdrew from the community. She couldn't face the whispers, the stares, the judgment. She moved to a small town where no one knew her, carrying the weight of her son's actions and her perceived failures as a mother. She often sat alone, staring at old photographs, wondering where she went wrong, and if there was ever a chance to change the course of their lives. Detective Marcus Bell had seen a lot in his 20 years on the force. Drug rings, domestic homicides, even a school shooting, but nothing quite prepared him for Caleb Holloway. The boy's calm demeanor, his articulate explanations, the complete lack of remorse. It didn't add up. Bell had learned to trust his gut, and from the start, something about Caleb's story didn't sit right. The public was relieved by the arrest. 2 girls were dead. Caleb confessed. Case closed. But Bell wasn't so sure. There were discrepancies, little things that didn't match up. The timeline Caleb gave for Rachel's murder didn't align with the autopsy report. The rope found in his room was similar, but not identical, to the one used on Emily, and one entry in his journal mentioned a third, but there were no reports of another missing girl. Bell dug deeper, requesting Caleb's computer and digital footprint. His search history was disturbing: anatomical studies, serial killer documentaries, chatroom forums where users discussed the art of elimination. But buried in all that were private messages, conversations with someone who used the username GhostPath. Who was GhostPath? The tone of the messages was different, more dominant, instructive. Caleb appeared to be taking advice, following steps, asking questions. This wasn't just a lone teenager acting out fantasies. There was someone else involved, possibly someone older, smarter. Bell requested the help of the FBI's cybercrime unit. It took weeks, but they traced GhostPath's IP address to a coffee shop in the next town over. Security footage revealed a man in his late 20s, always seated alone, always with a laptop. He paid in cash. No name, no trace. Meanwhile, Diane was spiraling. She had moved into a motel outside of Fairview, unable to face her neighbors. She agreed to speak to Bell again, this time without defense, without denial. "I don't know when I lost him," she said softly. "Maybe I never had him to begin with." Bell asked her about the journal, the drawings, the rope. She confirmed she had seen those things, but hadn't connected the dots. "Did he ever talk about anyone online?" Bell pressed. Diane hesitated. "There was one time. He mentioned someone named Jay. He said they talked about strategy. I thought it was about a game." Jay. Could Jay be GhostPath? Bell sent the information to the cyber unit. The man in the coffee shop used a VPN, multiple firewalls, and spoofed accounts. But a minor slip, logging into an old email address linked to a college application, gave them a name: Jason Merrill. Jason had attended Fairview Community College, dropped out after a year. No job, no stable address. But his background was chilling. He had once been questioned in connection with an animal cruelty case, but released due to lack of evidence. The FBI began surveillance. Jason was cautious. He moved locations often. He never stayed online for long, but he didn't know they were watching. Then came the break they needed. A new girl went missing, Samantha Reed, 17, her last known contact. An anonymous message inviting her to a fake modeling audition. The IP traced back to Jason. He was arrested within 24 hours. In his apartment, they found photographs, personal belongings of the victims, and a notebook that mirrored Caleb's. It was clear Jason had been grooming Caleb, manipulating him, teaching him. But the question remained, how much of it had Caleb done on his own? Jason's trial ran parallel to Caleb's. Jason claimed he never met the boy in person, that everything was role play, a fantasy. But the evidence told another story. He had orchestrated the murders, guided Caleb's hand, turned him into a weapon. The community's reaction was mixed. Some saw Caleb as a victim, an impressionable teen manipulated by a predator. Others saw a monster who made his own choices. Diane sat through both trials, silent, pale, hollow. Bell visited her afterward. "You did the right thing," he told her. She didn't answer. The media latched onto the narrative. The mother who turned in her monster son. Some called her brave, others blamed her. Alone in her motel room, Diane stared at the news coverage. Headlines, commentators, online comments dissecting her every move, every photo of her with Caleb. She felt like she was living someone else's nightmare. In one moment, her son was a boy who liked puzzles and blueberry pancakes. In the next, he was a headline. Bell closed the investigation officially 2 months later, but the case haunted him. He often returned to Caleb's interview tapes. In one, Bell asked Caleb, "Do you regret anything?" Caleb tilted his head. "Regret is for the weak," he said. "I learned that from Jay." Bell turned off the tape. There was no victory in this case. Just bodies, broken families, and a mother who would carry a lifetime of questions. And even with Jason behind bars, one thought lingered in Belle's mind. Was there anyone else out there watching? Waiting? If any part of this story feels disturbingly familiar, pause for a second, like this video if it's making you think, and tell us in the comments, have you ever seen signs in someone close to you that you chose to ignore? Sometimes reflection is the first step to awareness. For weeks after Jason Merrill's conviction, Detective Marcus Bell found himself unable to sleep. Something about Caleb Holloway's story kept clawing at the back of his mind. Yes, Jason had manipulated him, drawn him into a dark, depraved world, but there was something in Caleb that couldn't be explained by influence alone. Something innate. Bell reopened his notes and began combing through the psychological evaluations from the trial. Caleb had been assessed by 3 separate professionals. Each one concluded he had antisocial personality disorder with signs of narcissistic and psychopathic traits. But one report stood out. Dr. Evelyn Marks, the school psychologist who had evaluated Caleb years earlier. Buried in her notes was a red-flagged sentence. Subject exhibits an unusually high tolerance for emotional detachment and advanced manipulation strategies at age 9. 9. Bell couldn't shake the timeline. Jason didn't enter Caleb's life until much later. So who taught Caleb to be that way? Diane Holloway, now a shadow of the woman she once was, had moved into a trailer park 3 towns over. Bell paid her one last visit, not as a detective, but as someone seeking answers for himself. I need to ask you something, and I want you to really think about it, he said gently. Before Jason, before everything, was there anyone in Caleb's life who showed him how to lie like this? To hurt without remorse? Diane hesitated, her face pale. No one. He didn't have a father. It was just me. But Bell pressed further. What about his father? Did Caleb ever ask about him? She looked down. Only once. Bell waited. She finally spoke. David Kessler. The name meant nothing to Bell, but when he returned to the station, he ran it through the system and froze. David Kessler had a sealed juvenile record, followed by years of instability. He was convicted of manslaughter at 17 for the killing of a classmate, stabbed 37 times. He had pleaded temporary insanity and was sent to a state hospital. Released 5 years later, Bell dug deeper. David had disappeared after Caleb's birth. No contact, no support, no presence. But blood doesn't vanish. He requested a DNA comparison between David Kessler and the forensic evidence found on Rachel Monroe's backpack strap. Trace epithelial cells that had never been matched to Caleb. The results came back. A 99.9% familial match. It wasn't Caleb's DNA. It was his father's. Bell's hands trembled as he read the report. David Kessler had been near the scene of the crime. Bell pulled the phone records from the state database. David had used burner phones, switched addresses constantly, but one call pinged near Caleb's school 6 months before Rachel vanished. Everything shifted. Bell arranged a full background profile. David had been living under a false name, Daniel Cross, in a neighboring city. He'd been working as a maintenance worker at a strip mall. He was quiet, kept to himself. No criminal activity since the manslaughter case, but the influence, the presence, it had returned. Bell informed Diane. She went pale. "No," she whispered. "I never told Caleb who his father was." Bell nodded. "But maybe David found him." 2 days later, surveillance footage from a school hallway confirmed it. A man in a janitor's uniform had stopped Caleb in the hallway. They spoke for 10 seconds. Caleb didn't look surprised. Diane fell apart. "He knew," she said. "All this time, he knew." Bell confronted Caleb again. This time he showed him the picture of David Kessler. Caleb stared at it and smiled. "That's my real father," he said softly. "He understands me." It was the final piece. Jason Merrill had been a mentor, but David Kessler, he had been a shadow figure, hovering just outside of the known world, quietly steering Caleb's evolution from afar. Bell connected more dots. The first animal killings, just months after David had been released, the increase in violence coinciding with David's quiet re-entry into Fairview. But the worst came last. A letter was found in David's storage unit. It was addressed to Caleb. It read, "Son, they will never understand you. They will try to fix you, to mold you into someone you're not. But you are perfect, exactly as you are. This world belongs to those who are strong enough to see through the lies. I knew you'd find your way. I knew you'd feel it, the urge, the power, the silence after." Your father Bell read the letter 3 times. This wasn't manipulation, it was legacy. Caleb didn't just become a killer. He was raised to be one. From a distance, in whispers, through a bloodline soaked in violence and secrecy. The town of Fairview never knew what hit it. While the community mourned, while headlines faded, Bell sat in his office, haunted not by what Caleb had done, but by what Diane had never known. Some monsters aren't made. They're inherited, and in the dark spaces between silence and blood, one boy found the voice of the father he never knew, and followed it into hell. The trial of David Kessler never happened. Before law enforcement could bring him in, he vanished. His apartment was cleared out overnight. No prints, no cameras, just a lingering cigarette still burning in the ashtray and a copy of Crime and Punishment left open on the kitchen counter. Detective Bell issued a statewide alert, but privately he knew Kessler wouldn't be found unless he wanted to be. Back in prison, Caleb Holloway changed. He spoke less, stared more. His smug confidence evaporated the moment he realized his father had left him behind once again. In one of their final sessions, Bell asked Caleb, would you still have done it if he hadn't been there? Caleb looked at him and said, he was always there. Diane never recovered. She moved to a remote cabin outside Vermont. She changed her name, disconnected from everything. Her days were spent walking the woods, avoiding mirrors, avoiding her own memories. She stopped answering phone calls, even bells. Once a month, she would send a letter to the prison, never signed, always the same. You were born loved. You chose the rest. The town of Fairview moved on, slowly, but scars remained. The school where Caleb studied installed new security systems. Teachers were trained to detect signs of emotional detachment, cruelty, and manipulation. A plaque was placed on a bench near the school library, honoring Rachel Monroe and Emily Sanders. 2 girls whose lives were stolen by something no one could name in time. Jason Merrill died in prison 3 years later, stabbed in the shower by another inmate. No one mourned him. Detective Bell retired, but the case never left him. He began teaching at a police academy, and on his first day of class, he told his students, "Evil doesn't always wear a mask. Sometimes it calls you Mom." He often thought of Diane, not with judgment, but with a grief so heavy it felt like guilt. She had loved her son with everything she had, but sometimes love is not enough to stop the darkness. And that's the question that lingered in every mind that heard the story of Caleb Holloway. Was he created or born? How do we reconcile the terrifying idea that monsters might come not from broken homes or violent media, but from within? Can a mother be blamed for not seeing what no one else could? And what happens when the person you raised turns into someone the world must be protected from? Diane Holloway didn't set out to create a psychopath. She set out to raise a child. But life, blood, and silence, those did the rest. And somewhere out there, David Kessler breathes freely, a ghost in the system, a father who passed down not a legacy of wisdom, but of death. In the end, the lesson isn't about evil. It's about blindness, and the terrible cost of loving someone too much to see them for who they truly are. If you were Diane, what would you have done? Would you have seen the signs sooner? Would you have called the police? Or would love have blinded you too? This story isn't just about a mother and a monster. It's about the terrifying possibility that we never truly know the people we love. That darkness can grow quietly, patiently, right under our roof, disguised as silence, as solitude, as genius. Now I want to hear from you. Do you think Caleb was a victim of his father's influence, or was that just a convenient excuse for a killer who knew exactly what he was doing? Was Diane guilty of denial, or just a mother trying to believe in her son? Tell me in the comments below your theories, your thoughts, your emotions. Let's talk about it. And if stories like this move you, shock you, and make you think twice about the world we live in, subscribe to the channel. Hit that bell so you never miss a new case that could be happening closer than you think. And share this video, because someone out there might need to hear it. After all, what if the next Caleb is already growing up in someone's home right now?